Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to the Theory of Life podcast. This is Wade Morgan. I'm with my friend Ben Beam, and this is going to be a very different kind of topic. It's not like phil religion necessarily, but it might be some kind of philosophy of music ish, kind of like. He's a composer. He's a wonderful friend I've had for 6 years now. It's been a long time. Anyway, so Ben, you introduce yourself and perhaps some of the topic. We don't exactly know what the topic really kind of is, but it's music related ish, so we're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's quite the honor to be here. I feel like I'm in good company. Some of the other people that you've had conversations with on this channel.
Yes,
It's been a
sir.
long time coming, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we end up talking about. A little
Yeah.
bit about me. Wade and I went to undergrad at Bob Jones University together. We were
Yep.
both piano performance majors, so we were able to kind of grow with each other in our musical journeys, which was just really fun to see. And so he is one of my best friends, if not my best friend.
Aw.
And so
Same
we
to you. Same
um, we
to
love
you.
to just talk about all things music, and also we both have an interest in like philosophy and self-help and things like that. So
Yeah.
we love to kind of go there as well.
We
As
we
far
might
as me,
we might do another topic at some point on self development, perhaps, but that's for another
yes,
day.
that would
So
be that would be awesome.
anyway.
But a little bit about me personally. Yeah, I graduated from 4 years of piano performance, and now I am living at home, trying with my parents, trying to save some money and start a music career and get that off the ground. So, trying to slowly build a studio where I can teach piano and then hopefully get into producing and composing as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so Ben Beam is at Bob Jones. He was known as the composer guy and the guy who could hear anything and play it immediately. So he absolutely is very talented with all of this. So let's see here.
Oh
Tell
yeah, you
us a
wanted me
little
to
bit.
introduce the topic, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I thought that was kind of introducing the topic. We don't necessarily have a strict topic, but like if you have an
We don't.
idea for something more clear, then please bring it to the table.
No. Basically, we are we're gonna try to stick to music in general, not classical, not pop, not any one type of music, but music in general. And I'd say our current thoughts and understanding of kind of what's under the hood with what we experience with music. Um, I'm not, I said I enjoy philosophy. When it comes to music, there's a lot of thinking that can kind of go in the weeds really quickly. So we're going to talk about, aesthetic properties of music. We're going to talk about some of those philosophical parts of music. But just a precursor for me, I try to guard myself from really like diving too deeply into that, and I try to just keep music at a very transparent level of kind of how I view it, just kind of on a day-to-day basis. So I
Yeah.
think the style of this episode is going to be just a lot more conversational, and yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so on top of that, I'm interested because like you're a composer and I'm not a composer. I think there was a time when I
Right.
tried to compose something and at camp like people were just like, don't compose. And I was like, okay, I will never compose ever again. But I hope to take it up. But I do kind of want to pick your brain a little bit on not just for the podcast, but genuinely, I don't think we've ever actually had an in-depth conversation about your compositional process. So that could be something we could explore. But
Yeah.
also, but before that, I should say to the audience that I'm recording another podcast tomorrow with our friend Stephen Ramzik, and that's going to be on the conversation of value. So it's actually a really good kind of maybe part two to something like this. So stay tuned, like and subscribe. It's going to be fantastic. But anyway, so yeah, Ben, tell
Yes.
us about your creative process, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's not much of a process to be completely honest.
Okay.
It's interesting because, you know, also bear with me, I'm getting over a cough, so I
Okay.
might cough a few times. Um, but anyways, as somebody who does this more or less trying to do this for a living, naturally there have been times when I tried to really sit down with, a pen and paper and like dial in, okay, a very methodical approach to making music. Huh. And what I've realized
Ben's
is
dying.
that that is just extremely counterproductive for me. The more I try to be methodical about it, the more it seems to fall apart, the less inspired I become. to write. So what it turns out for me, whether I'm making beats on my computer or whether I'm sitting down with manuscript paper trying to write, you know, a piano sonata or anything in between, it doesn't matter. The principle remains, which is I often will go long periods of time where nothing really comes to me, and I sit there and I just try things out. I turn knobs, um, and press buttons, and I'm looking for any type of sound or any type of idea that triggers any type of feeling or response or anything that makes me say that's something worth pursuing. And when that happens, oftentimes I get an influx of inspiration. I skip meals, I skip sleep, and I just work on it until it dies. And sometimes that means the piece is finished, and other times that means, the piece is 10% done, and then I have to wait for the next influx of
Yeah.
inspiration to hit. So it can be a very laborious process, and it can be quite enjoyable, and it can also be quite draining at times. But I'd say in
Yeah.
a nutshell that would be my creative process.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe we can edit this part out if you don't want this in the podcast. But if there are videos of you doing anything, I think it might be interesting for the audience to check those out because we might need a little better picture of exactly what you compose, you know?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. There's no need to edit that out. I would say
yeah.
the reason he says that is because sometimes I can be a little bit self-conscious about my music. Lately, I've been getting into beat making, and I don't feel like I've really reached the level that I want to reach. So sometimes, there's a lot of precursors where it's like, oh, just don't
Yeah.
actually listen to it, just get the idea or whatever. With that
Hmm.
being said, I don't really have any like video footage of me creating in real time. That is something that would be fun. Try to get into doing, and it's very inspirational when I see other artists that I like that do that. So that is something that I'd consider doing. As of right now, I don't really have any videos or anything like that of me creating. If you do want to check out some of the stuff I've made on Apple Music or Spotify, feel free. Just Ben Beam. That's some of my most recent work. What's tough about classical composition is you're by nature working with real instruments, and you're not really working with MIDI or anything like that, at least in the final stages. It's a lot harder to get something to sound good, in like in the world of recording. So some of
Yeah.
my most proud achievements in music are ones that are very poorly documented for that reason.
Mm.
And that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. So I
Yeah.
will I will throw that out there.
Yeah. So, presumably, I guess one day your compositions, you might want them professionally recorded by fantastic musicians. That might be a goal.
Absolutely. That is
Yeah.
100% a goal that I should be pursuing more than I am currently. So
Yeah,
yes.
so here's something that I'm very fortunate to have, right? So I'm at Arizona State University and I'm a collaborative piano major. So I don't compose, I don't do any of that, but I do play a lot and a lot and a lot of music. And here's the thing, right? So I just recently did a recital. And the thing is, at Arizona State University, this is kind of plugging ASU, but like, I mean, there are so many fantastic musicians here. You can go down the hall, ask them, hey, record this with me professionally. You can go, do it, and it sounds better than the regular recording. Like, these kind of people here are so talented. And Ben absolutely has connections. And there's various ways, probably in Lexington, Greenville area, you might be able to find some connections like that, definitely.
Yeah,
Especially with
absolutely.
undergrad. So it's interesting. So I actually asked Dr. Moore about a clarinet player because I kind of want to
Hmm.
professionally record the recital I just recently did. But that's a project in the background, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
one other thing I will say about that, I have to cough. Hang on. I'm so
Ben is
sorry.
dying.
One other thing about that, that makes this a little bit more complex on my end is that with my split differences, or with my split interests, I'm kind of all over the place with what I enjoy with music. Somebody handed me $500 and said, "Go record something." Um,
Yeah.
I'd spend 2 weeks deciding, do I want to use that studio time for a beat, or do I want to use that studio
Yeah.
time for a piece of classical music that I composed my sophomore year of college? It'd be very hard for me to decide what I want because
The
as
golden
I
age.
yeah, as as I learn more things interest me, and it's just very hard to kind of make up my mind. So
Yeah,
there's
okay,
that.
so this was not on the question sheet, but I'm interested. What do you enjoy more? Maybe more of like classical style composition or the beat thing or what?
That is probably the most loaded question that we'll get into.
Please
Um,
answer. Please, I'm interested.
I think it's really interesting, and I think it really boils down to, how I was brought up, my influences growing up, and things like that. Where I would say I currently sit to kind of try to um, not make this into a 2 hour answer. Where I currently sit, I enjoy different types of music for different reasons. Um, I love a lot of different like popular music. Um, and I think that
Yeah,
there's extremely underexplored artistry going on under the hood of a lot of these songs that are fairly mainstream, which I think is pretty cool that
yeah,
billions of people can listen to a song and enjoy, but then true connoisseurs of the craft can kind of listen in a different way and enjoy it for a different reason. I think that's really
yeah,
cool. In general, I would say in this current state of life, I probably do enjoy um, the beat making aspect of music a little bit more than some of the more traditional classical music. With that being said, certain days I get a little bit bogged down and I close my eyes and I listen to Scarlatti or I listen to Beethoven or I listen to Chopin and I just think to myself like this is just truly some of the most beautiful music to ever exist. There's
yeah,
also a level of practicality that I'm not scared to admit to, where for me it feels like the more I invest in classical and traditional music, the more I'm kind of committing that time to really kind of own that in a way where you can't really back down because we'll be honest, it's kind of a less popular thing to do. So if you're going to do it, you're going to join a community and you're going to just really live and breathe in that world. Um,
yeah,
so it tends to kind of become a more of an all or nothing thing, I think, for most people. And so
yeah,
for me, trying to see the beauty and craftsmanship in both, I kind of do feel a little bit like the monkey in the middle.
yeah,
And that's something I have to deal with. But the short answer to that question is right now, I would say the beat making side of things generally from a compositional perspective interests me a little
yeah.
bit more.
Yeah, no, I think something else to add with the audience. Ben is not just a composer. He's not just someone who hears stuff and can play it. He's also a fantastic performer as well. So we both grow up in the classical tradition, and what that means is we learn all the old stuff. We learn like Mozart, Beethoven, Chopin, all of these crazy names you've heard, and like concertos, sonatas, and stuff. This man knows exactly what to do with all of them, so he's fantastic in that way. But I think this, I wonder how we can. I'm interested. So we've talked about this a little bit before. So there's in the classical tradition, there's kind of an elitism, right? There's this
Hmm.
kind of idea that unless it's something related to a classical style, what even I don't even know what the word classical style even means, but like there's this kind of idea if it's something like pop-ish, something more contemporary or popular or like electronic, then somehow it kind of sacrifices some beauty or something. And I don't know, like what do you think about that? I'll think about what I
Yeah,
think about that while
yeah,
you talk.
I definitely want to hear more of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah,
But but I'd say where I currently think of that, there's a fantastic YouTuber and pianist composer. Her name is Nare Sal. Wade and
yeah.
I have talked about
Uh-huh.
her a lot, and she
Eek.
talks about this. She talks about this a little bit because I feel like her and I, she's obviously a lot further down the road with her journey, but I will say her and I have similar experience where we really just love everything and
Yeah,
don't want to limit ourselves to one thing. But she also has a classical background, and she kind of talks about this pop-o-meter in some of her videos, where she'll play something, maybe a melody that could be played in any style, and she'll start off playing it as if maybe Scarlatti wrote it, or I don't know why I keep thinking of Scarlatti. It's just one of my
Scarlet.
favorites at the moment. But Scarlatti or Bach or Mozart or Beethoven or Liszt, and then she'll show this pop-o-meter where she'll start including certain idioms. She'll start including certain melodic patterns. For instance, maybe something a little bit more pentatonic under the right four chords can start to sound pop very quickly. And you can kind of analyze what about this is making it sound pop. Um, So I'm trying to remember exactly the question you asked. I know it was in regards to this, but
It's basically just your general thoughts on elitism in a classical tradition, where unless you're learning this classical music, unless you're doing Chopin ballades, you're not doing the right kind of music or something.
right. Okay, um, so yeah, I understand where that comes from because like I was saying, kind of like those formulas, so to speak, which are a real thing. Um, we had a theory professor who talked a lot about that, and I kind of tried to shove that under the rug of my, in my mind, be like, no, that's not true. It's not formulaic, but it kind of is.
Yeah,
In a Taylor Swift song or a Dua Lipa song, there is definitely an element of, okay, how many bars should this chorus be before the listener really starts to think about other things.
yeah,
And I think what we have to remember is that in a way classical music kind of does the same thing a lot. So I think there are similar formulas that take place in classical music, where if a melodic idea goes on too far, if I'm sitting in a composition lesson, my teacher might say, "Hey, I think this is a really good time to change your chord structure because you're going to start boring the listener."
mm,
Or I think you really need to insert a new theme here, and all of these things. And then you think about like back in the days of Mozart and Haydn and these people, they were writing so much music, and they were kind of the pop stars. They kind of were the rock stars at the time. They were thinking very pragmatically. They were thinking, I had to make a paycheck. So I think now where we stand now, and we think, oh, classical music is so much more artistic and everything, we're kind of losing sight of that context of, well, when they were making the music, they were thinking very formulaically. Yes, they also wanted to be artistic, but pop musicians, they're always looking for ways to infuse artistry into their music as well. So I think it's just kind of two sides of the same coin. I don't really see too much of an argument to be made that classical music is in any way superior as a whole.
yeah. Yeah, I suppose if someone really thought that something like, I don't know, Chopin Ballades work maybe in any sense objectively better than Taylor Swift's Wildest Dreams or whatever that song was, I don't know. I mean, I guess that might commit them to something that suggests that people's tastes have gotten worse, right? And there's something about society that's kind of bad because of that. I don't know. Is there a sense in which maybe humanity's taste has diminished in any way, or it's just changed? I don't know.
um, I mean, I got to think about that.
I will insert my own thoughts too. I don't want to make it just an interview, but I just have
No,
so
no,
many
no, no, no.
questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts, and then if I disagree, or I'll tell you what I agree with, I'll tell you what I
Yeah,
disagree with.
yeah. No, so
That'll give me
I'll
some
give
time to
you.
think about that.
Yeah, I'll give you a chance to think about that. No, so with the elitism thing, so I want to like save the cherry on top for like later, but like it's just itching at my mind. It's like, well, is music objective or not? Oh my goodness, is
Mm.
value objective? And it's so funny because so I have a friend here. His name is Sean, and he's the one I did the podcast on veganism. Check that out; it's a great podcast. But he's also a wonderful pianist, and we've had conversations. And there's this kind of idea where it's like any notion of ascribing value to any kind of music in an objective sense is misguided. That's maybe his view. And I guess to break it down further, it would be something like there's only taste. That's it. Like there is no objectively good thing. There's maybe a unit. Maybe there's unification in our psychology, but like that doesn't mean that it's good.
Right.
But then again, it's actually kind of a question of what we think. I wonder if what we think most people will enjoy is actually what they will enjoy. Um, and so it's one of those things where like I'm kind of like I guess agnostic on the issue. I think I might explore this in more depth tomorrow with Steven about like the
Yeah.
exact nature of value. I'm kind of agnostic on that in general because there is a sense in which like I'm opening up so many doors right now, but it's
Well, I,
interesting.
I was I was about to interject and say if you wanna break that open early, like that's totally fine.
Okay,
Um,
yeah,
if you wanna if you wanna go back to the popular music thing, that's fine. If we want, we could just kind of start talking more about that idea of value in music and how to
I
determine
think
value.
it's all gonna tie together.
It
So
will, yeah.
I think it's all just going to be a big old. So that here's the thing, right? So in the classical tradition, right, there is this kind of idea that there's a correct way to learn a piece of music, right? when you're in a piano lesson and you're learning a certain Beethoven sonata or something, and you use pedal over notes that are staccato or something short, that's a bad thing to do, right?
Mhm.
And the teachers are going to be like, you're doing something wrong. It's not just you're doing something that I don't like and that you don't like. So because we don't like it, we should do something different. It's like there's a wrongness there. Um, and that might be evidence for the fact that there is some wrongness. But I can also understand someone who looks at that and they're like, well, who cares? Like, I mean, maybe this is what Beethoven intended, but why should I
Yeah.
do what Beethoven intended?
This is
Um,
really interesting.
yeah,
Because the same type of thing actually happens in the world of music production.
yeah,
There are rules, and rules get broken all the time in the same way that rules get broken by, maybe a pianist like Long Long who does he'll pedal over a Bach piece, or he'll pedal over a
yeah,
Mozart piece in a way that the elitists are um just hating, and
yeah.
he does it, and it makes people that
Fits in
wouldn't
the
enjoy
face.
classical music enjoy it. And it's
Yeah,
kind of this question of, am I compromising? um the same thing happens in beat making, where there's rules. um okay, so when you're dealing with low end, when you're dealing with maybe the bass in a song, you tend to try to keep it more mono as opposed to stereo. So if you're listening in headphones, you don't want it to sound super wide. You want it to sound very narrow. And the reason being so that your high end or your mids, it can kind of branch out like a tree. And the cool little guitar lines, maybe one will be in the left ear and one will be in the right ear. And that sounds perfectly normal to us. But if you hear the bass and it's in one ear, or the kick drum is in one ear, it's gonna feel a little bit weird. With
yeah,
that being said, um, there are plenty of songs, or plenty of producers who have said, you know what, I know that rule, I know why that rule is a rule, and I'm gonna break it in a way that's not gonna be problematic to the listener. It's just going to I'm just gonna be a little bit of a rebel. I'm
yeah,
gonna keep the bass in the middle, and then this one part I'm gonna swing it all the way to the left ear real quick. It's gonna be cool, and I think in general the producer community tends to be a little bit more accepting of that than the classical community might be, of
yeah,
pedaling through a Mozart sonata,
yeah.
um, or something along those lines. But yeah, I think
No,
that exists there as well.
that's interesting, right? So maybe there's a set of rules, and as long as you intentionally break them with a good reason, you might be justified in doing that. Is
Yeah.
that maybe the position? Yeah. So some here's what's interesting, right? So imagine I'm listening to this beat that someone purposely kind of broke a general rule, and I don't know the composer's intent or the artist's intent behind that. And to me, it just sounds like, yeah, there's this weird bass in my ear that I actually don't like. Right? Is this a bad
hmm
artist? Or like, I think maybe you have to know the intent of the artist in order to appreciate what you're listening to. In some of those cases,
I
that was
think
kind
it's
of a
the ar-
thought.
I think it's the artist's job to not lose sight of their audience. And
Yeah,
I think every producer struggles with this, where they develop an ear for a certain sound that becomes less and less what normal people that enjoy listening to music really like. And I know it's something that I struggled with, maybe two or so years into my music production journey, where I was, not to say I was becoming more of like an elite, like anything but, trust me, but I was listening to music that I was supposed to listen to because it was kind of more artistic or whatever, and I started developing an ear for these sounds. Um, and I think, again, there's so many parallels. I think, it's very similar to, the more classical music you listen to, and maybe you start enjoying Bartok or Prokofiev more. It's kind of the same thing, where it becomes less and less what maybe a typical person
yeah,
you'd ask, who doesn't listen to classical music all the time. That might be a little bit of an acquired taste. Um,
yeah.
and as the artist, you have to just decide, okay, who am I writing for? Am I writing for me? Am I writing for them? Am I writing for other people that like this music?
Hmm.
Kind of go from there.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing I'm thinking about is kind of strange. Like, I mean, there's kind of this weird dichotomy between writing music that a lot of psychologies would probably enjoy and writing stuff that's individual to you. So there's a sense in which it's a little bit of risk taking, I feel like. Because I feel like in
hmm
order to make good music, right, it has to both be unique, new, individual to your kind of taste, but you also have to make it generally acceptable to an audience. So you're kind of like maybe taking a leap in the dark a little bit when you produce something maybe unique or new. What's your experience with that?
Um, yeah, so one thing that I was hoping we could talk about, and this might kind of open the door, is
Okay.
different functions of music.
Okay.
So eh, depending on depending on your goal for your music, you could be writing music to be accompanied with lyrics, where you're really
Yeah.
trying to communicate something, and the music is just kind of there to support the lyrics. You could be writing simply to entertain, which I don't think is as bad as some people make it out to be. I mean,
Yeah.
it may not be the highest form, but I certainly think there's a place for it. In the same way, there's a
Yeah.
place for watching a football game.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
I don't think we should be scared of it. And then there's the sense of, okay, I'm making music for myself, to grow and to learn and maybe to enrich myself. And then there's obviously in the world of Christianity or other religions, um,
Yeah.
there might be this sense of enrichment of the spirit or edification in music. And I think that I'm a believer. I think that's a perfectly valid reason to make music. And that kind of, these kind of overlap, that can definitely overlap into the communication aspect. I'm trying to communicate a message. Um, so yeah. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder how much of your music production is meant for an audience and how much of it is meant for your own, I guess, enrichment or something. And I guess it's not just a you question. I guess it's kind of like something I could expound on too as a performer. But yeah.
yeah. I would say I would say it's kind of a good balance right now. Something that I've worked on, kind of dialing it back into trying to make music that um, both interests me and also is something that I can show people and be proud of, and kind of get that validation from others that they see the value in what I'm doing. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of the time when I make beats on my computer, um, I end up just texting the audio file to maybe three or four friends, getting their
Yeah.
input on it, and then just kind of deciding, okay, what did they like, what did they not like, in hopes that one day I will continue to refine my craft to a point where it'll be something appealing to a larger audience,
Yeah.
um, while also keeping the integrity of I'm doing something that I like and that I would listen to and be proud of. That's
Yeah.
artistic. So I try to keep that balance. There's also this element of like I'm just trying to, like I said, I'm just trying to grow and learn and not be stagnant. So
Yeah.
like for instance, I'm taking guitar lessons right now. And yeah, like I want to play for church. I want to be able to record guitar for my beats. Maybe one day I'll be able to make money teaching guitar. There's so many different reasons that I'm taking it, but the biggest one I'd say is just to keep music feeling fresh, because it's
Yeah.
so easy to kind of get stale.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's kind of a lot of things with the creating and the composing. It's kind of all of the above, I would say. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely with what you do with collaborative piano. Um, we've had talks about the burnout that can exist in that world,
Yeah.
and kind
I
of
have many
the
friends who struggle with that. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely, and I know in college, when you're just doing it all the time, it becomes more of a task.
Yeah.
It can become more of a task than something that you actually enjoy. But
Yeah.
we haven't really talked about this in a while. I'd be curious to see your current your current experience with that. Where does music feel like a task to you, or does it feel like you're still getting to enjoy it and be enriched and grow in a way that excites you?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. And like, it is in the vein of the conversation we're having now about the purpose and the functions of music as well. Because like, I was actually about to kind of bring this up. I mean, it's complicated because I kind of have this vision for my life where I would love to be some kind of well-rounded pianist, like
Hmm.
a well-rounded pianist, not someone that performs successfully all the time, but someone that can do a bunch of pianistic things, right? So maybe I learn jazz piano. Maybe I'm good with my ear. Maybe I do sight reading or something. Maybe I learn a well-rounded amount of rep or something for me. And what's interesting with that, I envision that for my life, and it takes off a lot of pressure. It's like there's kind of this artistic thing that I'm doing, but there's no like pressure to have it perfect or anywhere near perfect. It's like
Hmm.
artistry isn't a linear uphill. I don't know. It's like when you're in the academia or when you're in school or anything like that. There's this kind of pressure to really, really, really refine. And I guess in an idealistic world, that's fine. But like I don't know, it kind of contributes to burnout. So like here's an ideal world. Something like maybe I learn a Chopin ballade at maybe like 50% adequacy, and maybe I can put it down for like a year and go back to it, right? And maybe it would be novel again too. I think I was thinking about this morning because we've had many conversations about novelty with respect to
Hmm.
self improvement and stuff, and like I've never thought about it until like a whole lot until like this morning because I was doing my run and I was like, you know what, this is getting a little bit boring. And I was like, if this continues at this kind of rate, at this boringness, I'm gonna burn out because there's nothing new in my life. And I think what you have to do in life, you actually have to one learn to persevere through times where there's no novelty, obviously.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
I mean, to be balanced and to live a healthy life, you need to add doses of like new stuff that excite you again, right? And I think what
Yeah,
happens
that's
is,
exact. Yeah.
yeah, so like when you're in a semester of school or something and you have a recital and like you can't change rep now because you're halfway through a list, Hungarian Rhapsody or something, like you have to do this. There is no room for novelty. And I
Hmm.
wonder if that's a bug, not a feature. And I think that's what contributes to a lot of burnout, on top of the fact that us collabs are just doing 50,000 things at once. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I also experience. Um, this feeling of being stuck and being roped into something
yeah,
that it's just kind of like if I wanted to stop, I can't. Um,
yeah,
when I Wade is 10 times better at sight reading. He has done a lot more of the collaborating side and the accompanying side. He's very
yeah.
envied on campus as an accompanist. I I I I tried to accompany I think 2 or 3 semesters in total. The first time I had about five students that I accompanied, and I thought this is gonna force me into having to sight read. This is gonna
I
force
remember
me into
that. I
having to
remember
learn this music.
that.
And I kind
Yeah,
of tried to see the glass as half full, where it was okay, I'm gonna purposefully rope myself into something slightly undesirable. I do this from time
yeah,
to time. And then
yeah,
sure enough, halfway through the semester I was calling my mom, I don't want to be in school anymore. This is awful. Whatever.
yeah.
All I all I do is learn pieces that I couldn't, that I don't care about. Um,
Yeah,
some second rate classical composer that just wished he
yeah,
was Mozart, and now
yeah,
I'm learning a vocal piece by him.
yeah.
Um, excuse the class the classical jargon. But anyways, but yeah, there is this element of like I would do anything to just not have to learn this and to just be able to sit down and make something that I actually care about. I think
Yeah,
the same thing happened to me. I was making a CD of Christmas music that I was going to sell and try to make a side income off of, and it turned out to be a fairly successful project. Was very proud that I stuck with it, but there was that same feeling of feeling roped into it, and
yeah,
I remember when I finally got to a point where I had a vision for like the end was in sight. All of the like 6 or 7 tracks were well on their way. There was no really like creativity involved. It was more of okay, I just need to tie up some loose ends. I told myself, okay, I'm finally at a place where I can put this down, and not worry about it because I know I have 2 3 days before I really have to finish this, and it's maybe hours worth of work. And I was able to like sit down and be like, I have been craving to just be able to make something else for so long. And I would sit
yeah,
down, and all of a sudden, I just felt way more creatively
yeah,
in touch because I was doing something that I wanted to do and I couldn't. And then like I
yeah.
made this beat, and I was like one of my favorite beats that I'd made in a while. And I was like, man, I'm so glad I was able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, Wade, when you when you branch off and you decide I'm going to put this on the back burner, in your case, I'm going to put this Chopin ballade on the back burner, and I'm going
Yeah,
to I'm going to learn this Bach piece, or I'm going to revisit a piece that I played in high school. Sometimes that
Yeah.
can feel so fresh and so invigorating that
Yeah.
it's just worth it. It's
Yeah.
worth maybe playing a little worse on your recital, because
Yeah.
maybe you would have just given up on the recital if you had just
No,
decided
yeah.
to try to push through it, you know? So I think
Yeah.
sometimes we need to give ourselves that break, and it can be super beneficial
Yeah.
um, to kind of
You
have
know,
that.
so there's an exact trade-off between the amount of time you've deprived yourself of novelty and the hit you get when novelty hits. So if you
Mm,
deprive yourself for 5 months and then you go into it, it feels incredible.
it does.
But and I think we would both agree it's difficult because like you need a healthy dose of novelty to not burn out. But the
Hmm.
thing is, any project worth pursuing, the novelty will go away. It
Yeah.
inevitably will, and you have to. I think the mark of a person who's willing to do whatever it takes is someone. I don't want this to verge into like a self development thing. We can go right back to music, but it applies to music. I think you, the person who's willing to endure the absence of novelty, right? If you have that ability, you can go really far. But the thing is, it's difficult because we're human and have to have some amount of novelty. But like
Yeah.
the ability to push through that is like really,
The
yeah.
And the way you worded that, I think, is so good. I might like write that on a sticky note or something. Endure the absence of novelty, because
Yep.
that that is that is really what it is. It's hard to really live in that world of the absence of novelty, and this is going to depend so much on who you are, and if you're more of a left brain thinker or a right brain thinker,
Yeah.
and so many other factors. But I think that idea of enduring kind of insinuates like a light at the end of the tunnel, which I think can be really
Yeah.
helpful. Um, because if you're just, like I said, if you're just living in this world of absence of novelty, um, that can be a problem. So if I have a recital in 2 weeks, I may be like, okay, I'm gonna be tough on myself. I'm not gonna make beats on my computer. I'm not gonna learn any other pieces. And if I do, it's gonna be very contained, and it's going to be for the sole
Yeah.
purpose of giving myself a fresh take on what I'm doing,
Yeah.
giving it kind of like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Um, but that's 2 weeks. If you're pursuing something that's maybe say this is why big projects like always fall apart. Like say I decided I wanted to learn all 32 Beethoven sonatas, and perform them in a 3 night series of concerts, and I set a goal for 3 years from now to be able to do it. Like on paper, I probably could do it. And it'd be really fun at first to like sit down and write out a whole game plan of,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I need to learn this much, and maybe I'll learn a little bit. Maybe I'll learn the A section of this sonata, and then also do maybe one of these slow ones, and kind of watch everything come together.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
ain't no way, a year and a half from now I'm going to be anywhere near as excited to work on this.
Yeah.
And in fact, I might even consider, okay, well, actually, I could learn all the Mozart sonatas, and I
Yeah.
might decide I want to take on a project just as big, but something completely different, because I'm just
Yeah.
so hungry and thirsty for a breath of, that breath of fresh air. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's just a matter of knowing your limits, and knowing not taking on projects that are going to bore you, and they're going to lose that novelty. And with that
Yeah.
being said, unless you had anything else to say on that, I feel like that could be a great segue into the topic of musical maturity. And the
Okay.
reason I say that is because sometimes when I say the word novelty or boring in terms of music, the old classical snob in me kind of comes out and vomits and says, no, it should never feel that way.
Yeah.
Music, you should never get bored, or you should never pursue novelty. That's such a
Yeah.
shallow way of seeing music.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to know your thoughts on that. I know we talked about maybe talking about our individual journeys of maturing
Okay.
in music. I'd love to know how you view that, how you view novelty. Is that something that is a sign of an immature musician if they're looking for novelty, or just kind of your thoughts on that in general?
Well, so yeah, okay, I was gonna tack on one thing, the last little thing
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you said a minute ago. No, so I think if you take on a big project like those 32 Beethoven sonatas, it's
hmm
always going to take more than a 1 hour hype inspiration. oh man, this would be a great project. I'm just super pumped about it. Let me just write down a plan and do it. I guarantee
Hmm.
you it will fail, right? I
Yeah.
swear to you. And this is with anything, right? With
Hmm.
those kind of big projects, you better take at least a week or two or maybe a month to be like, what does this entail? Let me internalize this and let me see if it's something I really want to do. Now, smaller projects like
Yeah.
reading a book or something, like maybe you can live off that flame or something. But even then, you still have to be like, you know what? I'm going to intentionally do this. And so there's always,
So maybe there's this element of the bigger the project, the more of a the more momentum you need to create for yourself. And maybe
yeah,
by living in the planning stage for longer, you're actually creating more momentum. You're actually creating a bigger hype. You're creating a bigger fire that's going to push you a little bit further. Is that
yeah.
kind of
So
what you're saying?
that's a little bit what I'm saying, but I'm saying a little bit more than that because I'm just saying that like there was one part where yeah, I mean maybe you should hype yourself up more to motivate yourself more, but there's a sense in which like you should just actually internalize how painful it might be, right?
Hmm.
You should prepare yourself for that. I was talking to my friend Ben Speaks last night about the concept of surrender in Christian theology and everything,
Hmm.
and there's this kind of idea that like I don't know, like as a Christian or someone who has a big goal in life or something, we get really super hyped up about it and we're like, you know what, we're just going to surrender our lives to this. Maybe, we hear a nice church message or maybe I watch a David Goggins video or something. And I'm just like, you know what? Like, I'm just hyped. I'm going to go do it. That is naivety at its peak. Like, I mean, the concept of, I was telling Ben, I was like, surrender should feel painful. You should be excited about it because you're doing something great with your life, but you should also be scared out of your mind. And if you're not scared out of your mind, you're not surrendering properly. If you're not in touch with the reality of what it is, right? So you need both. And in a hypothetical world where you could not be afraid, great, but we don't live in that world, right? So it's a strong evidence that you're not internalizing surrender if you're not afraid. But that was just, and that might actually go into a way deeper kind of topic that we don't, this is not the topic of today. Um, but
I
anyway,
mean,
so
it definitely
yeah,
applies to music, but yeah, I mean, that's just that Wade is just dropping nuggets of life advice in general. So you should 100%
yeah.
subscribe to what he does because he breaks this down in other interviews.
There we go. So isn't
Him and I have had like 3 hour talks that were not music related, that were simply related to this exact idea,
yes,
in terms of Christianity, in terms of self development in general, in
yeah,
terms of self love versus self respect versus
yeah,
how we can have both. Should we have both? All of this
yeah.
stuff. Wade has
Mm-hmm.
thought. Any idea you've had, Wade has had. So he he
Same with
he is
Ben.
the
We both
he
have.
is the he is the go-to person if you're ever looking for counsel on that, and I receive counsel from him all the time.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yes,
Well, Ben helps me as well, so it's a two-way street. But okay,
I
so
help him be accountable for sure.
there we go.
It's a
So
great, yeah.
what was the question that you had earlier? You were asking us on the novelty thing. You had a question for me specifically.
Musical maturity in general.
Oh, okay.
Kind of your experience with it. Where you see yourself now. With musical maturity. Maybe how you thought of music when you were first starting out playing, what your incentives were for practicing versus what your incentives are now, versus maybe where you see your incentives being 30 years from now. Um,
Yeah.
I've kind of prepared a bullet list of kind of where I'm at, and I thought
Okay.
maybe we could compare.
Sure.
So
That's
yeah,
fine. Yeah. No, so I think actually what this conversation is verging on is actually a combination of the two things we love the most, which is actually really fascinating. That is
yeah,
actually self development and music. I think it's actually converging into this kind of thing because that question is gonna hinge on some personal life philosophies and stuff.
yeah, and feel a complete. I mean, it's your channel, whatever. But yeah, feel like there is
Yeah,
total freedom to branch out as much as you want and talk
yeah,
about, how that relates to you personally. So yeah, just floor
yeah.
is
No,
yours.
yeah. So musical maturity, it's complicated because like, and Ben can probably attest to this. Got an email from Josh Rasmussen. That would be cool if I had him on my podcast. Anyway, no, not like personal. It was like a
Yeah, yeah,
notification thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so me and Ben have probably struggled with this, but like this kind of goes back to the burnout thing. There's a real sense in which like okay, here's an objective fact. Ben has grown more as a musician in general in the past 5 years than I have in the past 10 years. right? And like maybe
That's
Ben
a
wouldn't
bold
think
claim.
Ben wouldn't think that he's progressing as much as he would like to, but relative to my progression, now here's the thing, right? So with ASU, it's a fantastic school. I love my professors and I love my colleagues. They were actually genuinely all fantastic. So it's nothing to do with ASU. It's nothing to do with Bob Jones. They were also fantastic. It's everything to do with me and my confusion with what I want to do in life. So I've actually been very stagnant. So me and Ben have had this conversation about it really sucks when you sit down at the piano and you try to play something and like or you try to learn something and like you just can't learn it the same you did 2 years ago. And you're like, am I worse as a musician? Like what is and maybe at the very least it's something like I remember a time and a place when I was improving and I could see my technique getting better. Maybe not every week, but like, every 5 months or so, I could, sit down, test my technique. You know what? I'm getting better. When that stops
Hmm.
happening, it's like so there's a sense in which I've kind of in the past few years I've been in this wishy-washy like, oh, I'm interested in music, maybe it could be a career, but like honestly I care more about talking about philosophy with Ben and my other friends at 4 o'clock in the morning in snack room. So like that's really how it is.
Yeah.
But really recently I've really started to internalize this musical part of me because like I think me being in the environment for so long has kind of burnt me out in a sense. I've just like only done this stuff for so long, and I never want to do it. And I've been thinking about the concept of a well-rounded person in general and what that means. I haven't talked to you about this in depth yet, but this is not the place necessarily. But we can touch on this particular part. Like as a musician, like there's a question like I think really I want to be a well-rounded pianist or some kind of well-rounded musician in some sense. Like it's kind of like a goal in my head that like I want to be the kind of person that is capable pianistically in whatever way he can possibly do it.
Yeah.
And I think this is giving new life to my musical talent and what I've worked on in the past. And I think maybe when I get out of school, well, I can do what I can do now because I'm doing recitals, so I can work on it now. But um, I should have another plan for the next 4 or 5 years that I haven't told Ben about yet. But
Oh
we'll
boy.
talk about that in a few days or something. Um,
Uh,
but like after that, like really kind of want to buckle down. Maybe my technique will be worse because I'll be working maybe 80 hours a week, but it's complicated. But like the thing is, like I really want to become a great pianist. And so like maybe in 5 years when I have the chance, or 4 years, hopefully maybe three, like sit down, hone at my skill at the piano and just like really be the best possible pianist I can possibly be. Um and that's
given
one
the budgeted time that you provide yourself, I think
yep. Yeah.
that's an important piece of this
Yeah.
is, maybe piano is only 5% of your life, because you're just
Yep.
interested in so many things. And this could apply
Yep.
to whoever's watching this. Maybe maybe you just like to pull up sheet music to a musical, and play it or whatever.
Yep.
Music is
Yep.
so vast. Maybe you play
Yeah.
guitar, maybe whatever.
Yeah.
Um, if you take, for me, one thing is like if I decide music is only something that I want to invest 15 minutes in a day, I'm gonna try to be Vladimir Horowitz for those 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's like a key to this is doing the most with the amount of time allotted and not feeling like you're inferior, or you'll never make progress or anything like that if you
Yeah.
decide, I'm going to spend less time on this. So I think
Yeah.
with where you are, Wade, it's like I'm, you know, things may change when you get out of school and music isn't a chore anymore, maybe like as it is now, and you might find a new enjoyment or something. But
Yeah.
wherever you are in life, there's always that ability to just kind of always have that little bit of time where you
Yeah.
decide I'm doing music and I'm going to grow my craft in X, way. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and that picture of like my future and like burnout in the past few years, that's only one small part of the conversation with respect to maturity. Um,
Right, right, right.
I think there's a lot to be said for like various camps that I went to, and like it's kind of easy to talk about the dark times of a musician's journey, but like there presumably me and Ben have both had like deeply inspirational like moments. Anyone that's passionate about anything, right, has had maybe that 1 week seminar thing they went to that was like
Hmm.
wow. I mean, this
Yeah.
happens with Christians. I mean, but like like maybe they go to the wilds and they're like Christianity. Like I
Yeah.
mean, this happens with a bunch, and like yeah, I mean, anyway. So those are my general. But so you talk about maybe your journey, or you can ask me
Yeah, yeah,
questions about
yeah.
whatever.
Let's I like where we just went with that. I think that creates like a great foundation for maybe talking a little bit more in depth of like the exact chapters in our lives.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exact
I
chapters.
find very interesting like when like how old were you when you started taking music lessons?
9.
You were 9. Okay. I
Yes.
believe I was 8.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a way I could go back
I'm a
and
late bloomer, I
find
guess.
that out. Yeah,
Yeah.
he wasted the first 9 years of his life. But no, so when you were 9, were you made to take lessons or did you show an interest in like I wanna learn music?
Wonderful question. This is a fantastic question. So
Yeah.
here's the this is actually like the most I love talking about this because it's like so wholesome. So okay,
Mm-hmm.
so when I was in elementary school, everyone took piano lessons. It was like the thing. So I remember like my friends Jemiah and then Alan Bruce and like David Bradley, all these people. Like shout outs to all of you who haven't seen in literally
Mm-hmm.
15 years if you're watching this, and I just dropped your name in this podcast. You're welcome. Anyway, so these people they were taking like piano lessons, and I was like, man, I want to be better than all of them. Because they were so they were all in like book 2 of the Faber things, like the blue one or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I was
Yeah.
like, man, I want to be in the green ones. By the time they're in the yellows or whatever. So I
Mm-hmm.
took piano and I was like, I'm gonna do it. And so within a year, I was better than all of them. And I was like, I'm kind of awesome. Like
Yeah.
goodness. So I passed. I passed these books super fat. But I should clarify because like this in the music world, in any world of any discipline, you're gonna find this. You're gonna think your journey is like awesome and like wow, you've improved so fast. You're gonna find these dang people who learned Beethoven sonatas by the time they were like in their second year of piano, and you're just like,
Yeah.
so Ben. So my friend Jennifer is taking piano lessons right now, and she's already doing stuff that I was doing in year 4.
Mm-hmm.
So this, I'm like, okay, it's fine. What Screw it. Why am I doing
Yeah.
piano?
But also there's an element of has this person already taken music lessons and understands,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
treble clef? Do they understand harmony? Do they
that's
understand
true.
some,
That
music
is that
theory?
is true. I didn't even think
Because
about that.
because I mean I'm experiencing that with guitar, right?
Yeah,
I blew my mom's mind the other day because I learned 4 chords on the guitar because I understand music theory. I was like, name a
yeah.
song. She named the song, and I sang it and played it, and she was just like, "How can you do that? You've only taken 1 guitar lesson." I was like, because once I know G, D, A, and C,
Yeah.
I know in what order to put those chords to make
No,
a
yeah,
song.
yeah.
Because of the 9,
Uh-huh.
however many years it's been that I've taken piano and
That's
composed and
true.
whatever.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. Anyway, but like that's just kind of where I come from. Like I just want to be better, and then like I just didn't
So
stop.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So you feel like when you first started, it was kind of maybe the driving factor was like this competition.
I also wanted to learn like theme songs. Like I've always like I'm
But
the kid.
why? But why?
Okay, so okay. So wow, that okay. You're getting meta. Okay.
No, 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 no. All I mean, I don't want to get to. All I mean by that was, I think there's kind of two camps, right? I think there's like when you're little, obviously you don't have like these crazy aesthetic insights unless you're, some crazy prodigy or something like that.
Mozart.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe, yeah. But what I'm getting at is, I think for me, and we'll come back to you because I'm only saying this to kind of introduce this idea. For
Yeah.
me, I think there was like this interesting combination where how like when a kid's like 8 years old, they find like dinosaurs really cool, or they find
I was me.
construction, they find
Just me.
construction really cool, they find sharks really cool, or they find tractors really cool, whatever. I think you could kind of make a case like, for me at least, it was kind of like that. It was just kind of like, this is really cool. Um,
Okay.
like I had like somebody that I look up to that was maybe 4 or 5 years older than me, Ethan Sadoyan. Um,
Okay.
and I saw this video of him playing this song. It was called the Train Song, and it was from like one of those starter books or whatever. And
Yeah.
not to say like, oh, I wasn't all competitive or whatever, because I definitely was.
This
But
is
I
so
think
fascinating.
at that age, it was more of like, I want to play the Train Song. That's so cool. Uh, and I
Whoa.
and I would say it wasn't even like I want to play the train song so that I can be better than other people. It was just like this is really cool, the train song. Like I want to play the train song. Um, Seriously, I'm dead serious. I got obsessed with the train song, and it was like magical. And then
Yeah.
like further on in my journey, I remember like sitting. I remember exactly the exact moment I was sitting down with my iPod, it's a Christmas present
Your
iPod, and I had
iPod.
access to YouTube, and I saw Mozart's Rondo alla Turca played on like one of those
Dog.
synthesizer like visual things or whatever. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, and the A major theme, for some reason, the octave theme, as
Yeah, yeah,
demonstrated here. Yes, I for some
yeah.
reason that like the world of sound that created was like pure magic to me. I can't explain it because now I listen to it and I think, okay, a nice A major theme, and maybe it's because I'm analyzing it a lot more.
Yeah.
Um, but there was something about the way like the notes, something about the melody, something about it that just felt like magical to me, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a feeling that I've been chasing ever since. Um, and then I got older, and a piano teacher gave me a CD with like Chopin pieces on it. I remember feeling the same way about hearing some of just the richness in the you're gonna start playing this now because Wade knows how to play everything. The B flat minor scherzo, hearing that for the first time, um, and that motive that he just played, I remember thinking, oh, that sounds like a spy, like, and I was probably like 11 or 12 or something, and I remember
Yep.
thinking, oh, that sounds like cool and like I started like picturing scenarios and stories in my head of like what the music sounded like, and it was just magic. Or like Fantasy Impromptu, I heard that and I thought, just this just sounds really cool. Like I just want to know how to. It's kind of like this tinkering thing where it's like I want to know how this works. Like I want to know why that feels so cool. Um, so there's that, but I will not deny that there was also this 8-year-old lady that I definitely wanted to impress. Um, there was
Hey, old lady.
there was there was this element of I want to um make my parents proud, or I want to I just want to show off, as I got older,
Yeah.
especially like early high school, like 8th, ninth grade. I think it probably peaked where it was simply a matter of showing off. um so it changed over time,
Yeah.
um for sure, but back to this like competitive thing. I don't really think I felt that until like like maybe freshman year of college. Wade knows I was extremely competitive by then, and it was all about
So
competitive. And I
to
think
be
I think the
honest, I
re
think we all were pretty competitive because we didn't really know each other and we were going game. We're all
yeah,
piano, so we're all kind of
and we were
competitive.
all we were all coming from our own little hometowns where we were the best, and now
Yeah. Yep.
we're
Yeah.
going to an environment where now you kind of have to fight to be the best.
Yep.
So I
Yeah.
think that was a very natural thing to happen.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like, okay, so you started off feeling very competitive, wanting to get to the Green Book before anybody else.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, that mindset in a vacuum would not have brought you to where you are now. So clearly there was a change. Clearly there something more than that interested you about music, and I think that's where the kind of maturing process happens.
Yeah.
So walk me through like what that looked like. Maybe through early high school, how that kind of changed, or maybe what drew you to want to pursue music in college. All that stuff.
So I'm very fascinated with this. Okay, so to the audience listening, me and Ben have talked about everything under the sun. Think about any random topic. Like, what was it? In philosophy class, we were talking, or philosophy group, we were freaking talking about, like, does language come before meaning? Anyway,
Oh
we talk
yeah,
about
yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah,
like, but this is a topic we have never, ever, ever talked about. And so, like, this is
yeah.
very,
Okay.
anyway. So it's very fascinating to me. So it's actually not something I actually think about a whole lot, but like I kind of want to now because it's actually a little bit weird and confusing
Hmm.
why I continued. Maybe it was so okay. So it was the competitive thing, but I think I should really emphasize that like theme song thing, right? So like I'm okay, so
Yeah.
I'm a big like movie guy, big musical guy. And but the thing is like I'm also kind of a person that doesn't like to try new things. I'm like kind of stuck in my ways and like I have 3 movies that I love and I'll rewatch them 50,000 times, but I'll be able to repeat the entire film to you like perfectly. But
Hmm.
like anyway, so I had a few things in my head. So it was like Phantom of the Opera, like everyone knows this. Like that was a musical that I had. Then I love Jurassic Park because I love the dinosaurs. And Star Wars, different things. I wanted to learn like these different themes on the piano. Like that was what I wanted to do. I was like, I want to learn, like the whole. like the Jack Sparrow
Yeah,
thing
yep, yep,
was.
yep, yep, yep. Hmm.
Like all of this, I was like, it just would be so cool to just be. And it wasn't even like, oh man, I want to show it to everybody else. It was like I just wanted to be able to do this, and I think genuinely that might have pushed me to like an upper level because like
Yeah.
there was like there's like advanced. So what happens is you have big note. That's the kind of easy, and then you have easy piano, and then you have piano vocal, and these are all like scores for musicals and stuff and movies. Um, and I wanted to be able to play the most complex versions of all of this stuff, like that sounded the most accurate because I had electronic piano and I
Yeah,
had
you
like the
wanted to
pipe
feel
organ.
like you weren't playing the kid version, you know?
Absolutely, like
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I wanted to play the thing that sounded most like the thing. So like there was a pipe organ setting on my electric piano, and I had the Phantom of the Opera. That I had like the and I like thought it was the coolest thing when I could finally do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was honestly for the first few years, it was really just driven like I want to do this stuff. Like this is so much fun, and that's obviously still inside of me. But then I started kind of my teacher growing up. Like I mean, she's a wonderful person, a wonderful teacher. She's not like deeply engrossed in the classical tradition, but like she's aware of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think one of the first classical whatever the word. Maybe we could sometime discuss what the word classical even means. That's weird.
Yeah.
Um, but so one of the first ones I did was, I think it was like the one Ben was just talking
Yeah.
about. Um, that was one of the first ones, and then it was no. It was the Mozart Fantasy in D minor. The one like
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
yeah like all the kids learn, but then you realize you need to actually be intentional about learning it, so you'd learn it like later on in life.
Mm-hmm.
So it was that, and then it was the Rachmaninoff C sharp.
Oh goodness.
And like these in Claire de Lune,
Mm-hmm.
these things like vaguely interested me. Like they were fine, and I liked them. And but I guess I liked it enough to continue doing stuff like that because I think it then introduced this whole. Okay, so I grew up. Here's the difference between me and Ben. So Ben was homeschooled, but I went into like a small private school, right, which is presumably different than most people because most people go to state-funded public schools. But I went to a school where it's a tiny amount of people, right? So there was a very real sense in which like me and Ben were like the best pianists in our circles because our circles were
Mm-hmm.
kind of small, right? But
Very,
I
yeah.
should plug my friend Theo Romizer here. He was a great competitor and he's a fantastic pianist as well. Anyway, but so I think there was an element of like so we did competitions every year. It's called SCACs and stuff, and it was like if you won that thing or like placed, like you were really cool. And like so I did it, and my teacher was like, "Do it." And I was like, "Cool, great." And I'm actually thinking while I'm talking, and I'm like observing my own past, like maybe for the first time in a while with piano. Like I don't think I had really a big interest in. I mean, people like the Claire de Lune because it's pretty, and they like the Turkish March because it's cool, and obviously they like the all that because it's epic, and you have these big chords. Like these popular pieces sound cool, but I never really had an interest in classical piano at all. It just like the super cool ones that everyone knows. And I wasn't even interested in exploring new stuff. I was just like, I just like these movie themes and these really cool sounding pieces. And I think it wasn't until like the summer of 10th grade I went to Furman University for a camp, and it's called Summer Keyboard Institute. And for the first time in my life, I had met people who were like interested in the classical tradition and they were really good and like they were learning stuff in 3 weeks. This one guy named Sam Tam learned the Brahms Blot in 3 weeks, and I was like screaming out of my mind. I was like, "What in the world? That's crazy!" And this guy was composing. I'd never even heard. I didn't like this guy was composing stuff that looked like Rachmaninoff. I was like, he's like 15. What is he doing? Like this is crazy. And then it was just it was a wild time. Then I got like really close with them, and like it was like, and my friend Chris Saba, like it's just it's crazy. Like anyway, so I went home after that, and I was like, I got to learn all this new stuff that I've heard about. So then I heard it was wild. It wasn't until I was 16 that I heard of the Hungarian Rhapsody #2. Yeah, I never even knew that
Mm-hmm.
piece existed. Like, and everyone is the dang Tom and Jerry thing. Um, but like that, I went home and I was like, I'm gonna learn all this stuff, and it's really cool. And then and I kind of got into it, but like maybe
Kind of
it
just
was
got
kind of,
inspired to do it. Like maybe
yeah,
it wasn't like, oh, I need to do it because other people are doing it. I'm so far
no,
behind the curve. Maybe it was
yeah,
just like, wow,
yep, absolutely,
maybe subconsciously it was maybe this. I want people to think of me in the same way that like I'm thinking of these people right now, where it's
Yeah.
kind of like, wow,
There's
those
that.
people are giants to me. I want to be a giant
Hmm.
to somebody else. And the only
Yeah.
way to get there is to continue pursuing something that I've already invested in. I got
Yeah.
to just keep growing, you know?
Yeah.
But
It's
but
so
but I
interesting.
will say, you know, I think it's interesting how you use those adjectives to describe some of the more iconic pieces of like classical piano literature,
Yeah.
like the beauty in the Clair de Lune and the maybe the
Yeah.
epicness
Yeah.
in the Rachmaninoff. I have
Yeah.
found it very interesting, this kind of like juxtaposition of, or that's probably the wrong word. Um, I don't know. This idea that like we are all seem to be drawn to like a select group of
Yeah.
iconic pieces. Um, and you know, Wade knows this when you get to college and you tell your professor as a freshman, I want to learn Moonlight Sonata, they're gonna
Shut
look
up.
at you like, please don't. Everybody plays
No.
that. I don't need to hear
Everyone.
it butchered anymore. Plus, you're probably gonna injure yourself. Plus, I just really don't want to hear that piece ever again.
Yeah.
Um, Huh. So I think it's interesting to like kind of dive a little bit into, while kind of keeping it into this idea of maturity, because I definitely think it pertains to it. Like for you, you know, when you're learning Rachmaninoff C sharp minor prelude, are you thinking, oh wow, a lot of other people have heard this. They know it's difficult. They know how cool it is. I want to play it um because of how recognizable it is to other people? Or was it like you listen to it and maybe the fact that it's popular is because it's just a really cool piece? You know, there are
Yeah.
certain things about a piece of music that just make them iconic. So maybe you listened to it and you didn't even know it was popular. You just knew it was really cool and you
That's
wanted to learn it
exactly
for
what
that
happened.
reason.
I was about to say. Exactly what happened.
You didn't even know it was popular. You were just
No.
like, this just sounds
I,
really cool and
it's,
epic.
it's, yeah.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I was kind of curious because I think that really does show maybe like a serious leap in, I guess, what we'd be calling like the musical maturity, where
Yeah.
now you're interested in the piece for the sake of the piece because
Yeah.
there's you know, it's kind of this idea. I know I've used this idiom like 3 times, whatever, of like you want to find out what's under the hood. It's kind of
Yeah.
like you taste something and you want to learn how to recreate that, so you look up the recipe. I think it's similar, like this curiosity of like why did that sound so cool? Like I want my fingers pressing down on the keys to create that same sound
Yeah.
that I'm hearing, and that's 100% doable if I just learn the piece, you
Yeah.
know. And I think that's and I also think I love to use this analogy of like magic, in the same way when you watch a magic trick, obviously you kind of want to know how it's done,
Yeah.
um and the mystery behind it is so enjoyable, and like it scratches some itch in us as humans,
Yeah.
to just want to know how that's done. Maybe similar, like when you're, you know, okay, so with the C sharp piece, that's interesting. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but when I first heard that, I was enthralled by the way it, and I apologize to all of you that this is probably going to sound like another language. I'm sorry. I won't stay here. Um, but like I was enthralled by the way that the chords in the right hand moved parallel. It
Yeah.
was kind of like a block chord, and then the way it moved, it just created a sound that was unique and that I thought sounded kind of like cold and angular. Maybe was is like a good
Okay.
way to word it, and just the harmony that was created by that. Something about it was really cool. So for me, this was probably a lot later on in my musical journey. Like I don't even think I knew about that piece till probably like 10th grade or something like that. Um, and by then I was just very into, you know, composing and arranging, making hymn arrangements, whatever. Like I was so all over the place. I was trying to make hymn arrangements that
Yeah.
used, like I wanted to figure out, okay, how did that get the sound it got? I'd kind of figure out, and then I'd kind of like do like a conversion factor of like, okay, now how do I achieve that same sound in my hymn arrangement? And it led to
Hmm.
me making these hymn arrangements that sounded extremely cheesy and corny because I was trying to incorporate ideas that I found in classical pieces.
Hmm.
Um, but I think like compositionally that is really what we're all doing, is we're trying to figure out why that sounded the way it did. How can I get that same idea without just completely ripping off
Yeah.
what the other person has done? Um, So
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit of a difference is and maybe that's why I, you know, got more into the composing side of things and you kind of leaned heavier, more heavily, excuse my English, um,
Heavily alert.
heavilier, making up words here on the Theory of Life podcast. Um,
Yes, sir.
maybe that's why you leaned more heavy into the performing and I lean more heavy into the composing is just a difference in interest. And maybe if we pinpoint a certain piece like the Rondo alla Turca or the Chopin or the Rachmaninoff piece, we can kind of
Yeah.
see, okay, what angles we were taking on what we were hearing and how we
So
approached that,
yeah, this
is
is
that's very
huge.
intriguing to me.
So I might like, push back against something you said. So I don't think I'm more into performing than you, and you're more into composing than me. I mean, you are more into composing than me. I just think you're more into music than me, right? I think that was just a bigger part of your life. So like I think so you're interested in a lot of different kinds of musical things. I think I'm interested in like more things in general, right? So like
That's true.
yeah,
I do think like when we were both freshmen in college, I think that the amount of time that I invested in music and the amount of time that you invested in music probably pretty close. Um, I think that you were probably about 10 to 15% better than me at just playing the piano in general, and he's gonna disagree because he's humble.
he literally won the competition that year as a
He's
freshman playing.
yeah, and so wait, that's because that's because that's because I just took it way too seriously. Um, wait is and yes, wait, whatever. The point is that he is also a much better sight reader than me. Um, and he can't even deny that. That's
That's
just true.
probably true.
I guess you could kind of see where he's going with the performing thing, but trust me, that's a lot more dimensional than he's making it. It's not about one competition. Um, it's
Well, so
about just
here's the point that I'm making. I was just saying that like you are more deeply entrenched in music than I was, um, and I think
says the guy that's literally in a grad program in music,
no. So
and I
okay,
stuck with undergrad, and
well,
I
no,
make like one beat per day. I spend like an
so
hour a day on music.
think about this, right? So maybe you can't sight read. Let's just put that aside, okay? But here's the thing, right? At the very least, we are both at a similar competence level with classical piano. Okay, let's say
Yeah,
you have more technique on your fingers, but you might reject that. But anyway, like
I reject that. I
let's
reject
say
that.
we're at a similar level. The thing is, like, you can compose, you do stuff by ear, like all of these
Uh huh.
different kinds of things, right? And like, it's not to say that Ben's just like a better musician or he's better. I mean, it's just like we're human and we all have different interests. But I think what's interesting with this is like I think it points to like a deeper interest in music, like a different causal origin of your deeper interest in music. Because like literally mine. So I was actually so fascinated when you said that like you viewed the piano like I viewed dinosaurs or something. Like that was absolutely not what that my interest in Lego, like my interest in Lego Star Wars, is just relevantly different from my interest in piano. Like it was like I wonder how I can like make a parody or an analogy because like I just the piano was a tool I could use to get something like the dinosaur. It like the piano itself wasn't the dinosaur, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but like, but anyway, so, but I do want to hear more about your story. But I want to tack on a little bit more about mine. And it might open up a little bit of a Pandora's box because it's an interesting point. I think we've discussed it before. I'm not to it. So I'm like kind of closed minded in general. Like it's like difficult for me to like get out of my comfort zone with certain things. Like I just maybe philosophically, but just like with like food. Like it took me the longest time to eat pasta. I was like, I just want to eat hamburgers. I'm vegan now, by the way. But like, I was like hamburgers. That's all I eat. But like, thank goodness veganism has pushed me into different. But the thing is, like,
I remember
I
your
actually have
obsession that you had with chocolate milk too.
dude, chocolate milk, man. That was I forgot about that. No, but like, what? It's weird because I have to be in a certain mindset to open my mind to new experiences, and I think in order to be interested in more classical music, you have to have that open mind because a lot of classical music isn't intuitively enjoyable. You have to find a way to enjoy it, right? So there's a piece of
At the
music,
start.
yeah, Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Presumably at the store.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like so during this camp week, like I was having the best week of my life, and like my mind was open to so many things just because I was just feeling good, right? Just in general. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like entertain these different musical pieces. And it was around this time that I found this piece by Debussy. It's called Reflet Don Low. Like it's like really pretty. Like it's so good. People have probably heard that before. It's so gorgeous. And like when I first listened to it, I was like, okay, this is fine. Like, it's a cool piece. But, like, then I started to, like, because of my open mindset, because I was happy during the week, like, or something, like, around that time, I actually started to search for beautiful things in the piece. And, like, then it got to the point where like, I discovered them. I was like, wow, wait, maybe I can be more in tune with this, like, emotionally. Maybe, like, I turned the emotional tubes or something. And, like, I don't know. It was a moment where I, like, refined my taste, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
And I haven't done that. I rarely do that. Like it's like it happens every once in a while, but like I think maybe the difference between us is that like maybe you have an interest in refining your taste or expanding your horizons. Just an idea.
And you don't think that you do?
Not as much. Definitely not. Definitely not.
It's interesting. Okay, so when you first said what you said there, my mind, with the food thing and like how
Yeah.
sometimes we don't like trying new things.
Yeah.
Um, that resonated with me because there's I'm at a place in my life where there's tons of things like that where I get content with what I like. I know what I like, and I don't feel like changing it.
Yeah.
So I think for me this is gonna seem very trivial, but I think it's also probably very relatable. Is like board games.
Yeah.
Nobody likes learning a new board game because
That's true. That's true, man.
you know the games that you like. You know they're
Yeah.
fun. And
Yeah.
learning a board game is probably one of the top 5 least desirable things to do ever.
That is such a perfect analogy. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I think it really is because um like right now, if you call chess a board game, that's what I play 99.9% of the time. I'm just obsessed with chess right now.
Yeah.
I'm on a losing streak. If you're a Christian, pray for me. If not, pray to Darwin. Do what you
Darwin.
got to do.
Darwin,
I need
please
to
help
start
me.
winning. I need
Please.
to start winning again. I'm getting very frustrated. Anyways,
You should stop
but no,
playing.
I like Settlers of Catan. I like Ticket to Ride. I like this game that you probably haven't heard of called Play 9. I play with my parents. Then I have this older brother, Zach, who loves learning new games. And he's always like, "Oh, I have this game. It's called Secret Hitler. We should play it." And he starts describing. He starts describing whatever.
Okay.
Hopefully that doesn't get your video unmonetized for saying demonetized.
You're good. You're good.
But no, that's funny. Anyways, he'll start describing this game, and my mind will just be like, "What I had for dinner yesterday." And I'll
Yeah.
just think of everything but what he's trying to do. I feel like a child when
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
learning
Yeah.
this game. Same thing, I work a pest control job right now, and the guys that I ride with, they just love to go eat at every possible fast food chain ever, which is a whole
Please
other
don't
topic
talk
because
about
I try very hard to not get sucked into that and to save my money and to eat healthy,
that.
but every now and then it doesn't happen. But like for me, I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna go to this restaurant, I'm gonna find one or two things that I really like, and I'm gonna order those every time. But some people are just not wired to think like that. They're wired to
Yeah.
think like, oh, this is an opportunity to try something new. Um,
Yeah.
and so with both of those things, maybe that's kind of how you view music. Um, you know what you
Yeah.
like, um, and,
Yes.
and there's a lack of curiosity. Whereas for me, um, I'd say more often than not, that's just not the case.
Yeah.
There are certain genres or styles that I feel like, okay, if you know what it is? It's like this thing where it just hits me when it hits me.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is maybe one day I hear a country song on the radio, and I was always kind of like, oh, country, yeah, that's not a good genre. That's whatever. Like I'm better than
Yeah.
that. And then all of a sudden I listen to it, and I just like totally vibe out to the country music, and maybe it's like an aesthetic thing where it's like, okay, I'm really starting to dig this aesthetic, or it's, you know what, they're doing something to that vocal that's actually really cool. Like, what if I could use that
hmm
or something?
Yeah.
Um, I remember my roommate Jonathan Espinoza put me onto this artist, singer, songwriter, producer John Bellion, and at the time when it came to like beat making and everything, I was getting in my inspiration from like 21 Pilots. I still do. I love 21 Pilots, but like there was something about the sound that 21 Pilots created, or like Owl City, or some of these other. I'd have to go back to back then and really dial in what was inspiring me. I listened to John
Yeah.
Bellion, and I was just like, this just isn't doing it for me. There's a lot of weird stuff in his music I don't really like. But because I had so much respect for Jonathan, and because I knew that he was a lot more in touch with what's going on in the music production world, I just kept listening to it and kept listening to it. Kind of like a peer pressure thing, kind of like almost like faking it until I made it, where I was like pretending
Yeah.
to enjoy it, and then all of a sudden it was just like, okay, yeah, this is just amazing. Like I just love this.
Yeah.
But what's weird about it is now, as I get old, this is totally rabbit trail, but as I get older, I realized that was extremely artistic. Um, no, I'm sorry, that was extremely creative and that was extremely complex. But maybe like from an aesthetic perspective, he was missing the element of restraint sometimes. And it was, he's known as a maximalist producer. Um,
Okay.
and if you look up like producers like Rick Rubin, or like Pharrell, Timbaland, like I started to really think of music in a different way where it was like simplicity. How do I use simplicity? How do I create a feel? How do I create a groove? And then like this whole what vibe, what like, oh, 90s versus 2000s versus 80s versus whatever, like different things start feeling fresh and exciting. A lot of it has to do with, you're on Instagram and you see a visual that goes behind it and you're like, oh, this indie vibe is really cool. That's what the cool kids are
Yeah.
doing. Like, and maybe that's me backsliding in a maturing sense, that like I've been sucked into this aesthetic that
Hmm.
isn't like super I don't know, like it's just become a lot more based off of what culture says is cool at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that's something that I kind of deal with now, and I don't apologize for it,
Yeah.
especially as somebody who needs to be in touch with that in order to really keep moving forward in a way that's going to excite other people. But like
Yeah.
a classic example of that would be um, like folk, something that I thought, okay, like I don't care at all about like folk or
Folk
whatever,
music.
and then and
Okay.
then I like see something where it's like this this girl and she's sitting out in the sun playing her guitar and it's like super simple. It's like a guitar in her voice and then like a fiddle in the background or something. And I'm not
Yeah.
thinking, oh wow, she stereo separated that guitar to sound really cool. I'm just thinking like, wow, like this is just vibey. Like I kind
Yeah.
of want to make folk music now. Or something like that. Different things are
Yeah.
always popping up and aesthetics are like swarming around. And that's just a
Yeah.
very like a very interesting thing for sure.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Yeah, I do think that I need to I don't know. I mean, with film, I like to kind of expose myself to new stuff, but yeah, with music it's just kind of like I don't know. I mean, there's really a kind of a question. We don't have to get deep into this, but like a new question, like how passionate am I about something? But
Mhm.
like, I mean, honestly, I've gotten past that question. I'm just kind of like, there's things that like I probably will enjoy, and novelty will cease to exist at some point. So ultimately, most of our lives are gonna feel kind of boring or hard. But like at the end of it, we're gonna look back and be like, yeah, I'm glad I did that. You know?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I
Um,
will say, I will say this. We had talked about maybe before we have to go, like trying to dive a little bit into this idea of like objective like value in
I was
music,
gonna say the same
subjective
thing.
value in music.
Yes. Yeah.
I thought of a way to frame this question, which would kind of kill two birds in one stone. It would talk about kind of an elephant in the room, musically speaking, and it
This
also
is going
me,
to segue into the Steven Ramsey podcast for tomorrow. So this is perfect. This
yes.
is great. Yes.
So yeah, this very very relevant thing, and I think it's a great angle to take on this question, and that is um what is the last thing that artificial intelligence will be able to recreate in music. And maybe if we can find what that is, maybe we could argue that in this current state of humanity, that is probably the most valuable. Like you track with what I'm saying?
I think so. This is very interesting. I okay, maybe elaborate on it a little bit more.
Sure, sure, sure. What I'm saying is right now, artificial intelligence has no problem with complexity. In fact,
Yeah,
artificial intelligence can make a piece literally 100 million times more complex than a Beethoven sonata, right?
yeah,
Like complexity, well, depending on how you define complexity, I guess. But as far as intricacy is concerned,
yeah,
as far as perfection in certain more like mathematical or finite things.
yeah,
So that's probably a fair case to say that like complexity in and of itself is fairly irrelevant when it comes to music. Another example of this is I can sit down and I can make a beat and I can sit there and I can draw this crazy automation line on like an EQ on the piano and I listen to and I let someone listen to it and they don't even notice it, but it's there. It's
yeah.
affecting the music in some way, but it's the complexity is doing nothing to the actual music um,
Hmm.
noticeable. Um,
Okay.
so it's like, okay, well, AI can replicate patterns, it can replicate formulas, it can do all these things. It can even sound like Drake, it can even sound like Taylor Swift. To the point now where there's music floating around where people are still trying to figure out like is that some lost demo from Taylor Swift or is that artificial intelligence? Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that and we're only going to watch that get better and better. So it's like what's going to happen with music? Like what are people going to start valuing? Because I think right now the general public of people still value just kind of like ear catching, cool, like our attention spans have gotten really short. So it's like really cool
Yeah.
snippets of music, something that would make a good TikTok audio, maybe like,
Yeah.
oh, that just sounds cool. Like that. But then I think, okay, well, once artificial intelligence can just make those a dime a dozen, which is getting close to being able to do,
Yeah.
um, are we still gonna even care? Like, or is it just gonna become so second nature that it's like another AI generated picture of clouds and a sunset where it's like this has zero value whatsoever? Um, so then it's like, okay, well, maybe humanity, maybe I have faith that like humanity in general is gonna start valuing music in a different light. Like, I don't know exactly what that light would be, but something that's harder to replicate. Like uniqueness in general, maybe restraint, maybe like
Hmm.
a voice in a guitar where it's like yes AI can replicate a voice in a guitar but the harmonics in the guitar the fact that the guitar is real maybe humans will really be able to start to tell the difference between a real guitar and a MIDI guitar um and like the little intricacies in someone's human voice that just is harder and harder to replicate as we become more and more in depth with that. Maybe that's where like the most valuable like last hurrah of music um there is. Like I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
making any sense.
No, yeah. So
Um
is the question kind of like what kind of how much aesthetic beauty can AI give rise to? Is that kind of a question? Like what would its limitations be with respect to aesthetic capability? Is that kind of a question you'd be entertaining?
um yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I think here's something that so I don't I've this is something I don't really think about much, but it's very fascinating. And so I only have a few thoughts on it. But like well, and I think I've told Ben this. I mean, one thing that AI will never be able to replicate, one aesthetic element that AI will never be able to tap into is the production of art by humans, right? So the mere fact that it was made by a human actually gives it more value, right? And
Yeah.
AI necessarily is not human, right? Or a person. We don't have to get into strict definitions of humans and persons, but necessarily it is not a person. So the
Right.
production of this art has a different origin, which actually makes it less valuable. Now, this is a different question from what people will care about. Um, and what people will care about, I think, as long as I think if people knew that this music was produced by something other than persons, then they might respect it a little bit less. But ultimately, we live in kind of a selfish capitalistic world where if you want views and money, then you use the most effective audio for your TikTok, and
Yep.
that's it. Um, so yeah, those are some general thoughts.
That's why I'm saying, like, do you think that that could change? Like, do you think that like on one side of the coin, I see people being like, okay, yeah, it sucks that this is just AI, but like as long as I'm able to use it, now I don't have to pay money to a subscription where I can find music that real people made. Now I can pay a very small amount of money for this subscription that just generates AI audio, and as long as it serves the purpose of this cooking tutorial video that I'm making, great, perfect. Um,
Yeah. So
or is that
yeah,
just gonna become very like nihilistic is probably the wrong word, but is that gonna become very like laborious and like
reductionistic
kind of
maybe.
kind of creepy? Maybe be a good word where we
Yeah.
just start feeling like this is awful. Like I don't like it's a certain emotion that gets triggered within me when I think about that. Like this is just kind of awful.
Maybe
I
like a
don't.
maybe like a robotic inauthenticity or something. I don't know how to.
Yeah, I don't know. I just hope that other people will share that emotion. I mean, I can't make them share that emotion.
Yeah.
I just hope to see us as like a society and as a culture start to kind of like push back on this whole idea of music as content consumption. Um,
Yeah.
and that's a massive can of worms we don't really have time for, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I guess I do want to say a few more things before the end.
I feel like we transitioned well into like a maybe like a closing thoughts
Yeah.
slash
Yeah. Yeah.
what's the word admonition, like go in
Yeah.
peace
Go in
type
peace.
scenario where we just
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
like try to
Yeah.
find a way to tie every all of the various things we said together.
Yeah, yeah, I do want to add maybe one thing about I don't exactly know what I'm about to add, but it's something that I'm thinking because I'm thinking about a lot of things right now, and like
You're
I
good. You're
actually
good.
kind of want to bring this up in the next podcast with Steven because this is very fascinating.
Well,
Like
hey, and I'll throw this out there. If ever we want to gather some more thoughts and have like a part two
absolutely,
to this, like I
absolutely,
would be down. Because I know we've kind of left a lot of things open. So
yeah, So I guess maybe a general thought is something like, do we want to live in a society where the appreciation of art has been diminished, like an authentic appreciation of art? Because as soon
hmm
as art becomes completely transactional and it's used as a means to an end, as opposed to an end in and of itself, um, I
yeah,
don't know if that's the kind of world we want to live in. I mean, maybe it would be there would be a trade off. Maybe there would be success in other areas, such as economic flourishing or something, and but reality is larger than economic flourishing and power. I mean, I don't know. Like, I really don't want to live in a world where we go into an art museum and we're sitting here trying to appreciate this beautiful painting of this woman or something, but in the back of our minds, we just know that a robot made that, and we're just like, man, like I'm really trying to appreciate this, but like this, nobody made this,
yeah.
right? And I'm just like, okay, that's cool. All of a sudden, every time you walk into an art gallery, the experience has been lessened by 50%. you know?
Well, what's interesting about that? This is oh my goodness. I don't know why I had to
Okay,
think of this. I had to say it.
we'll
Um,
wrap it up after your thought.
okay.
Yeah,
I'm sure someone like you could provide plenty of pushback to this. I don't want to sound like I'm
I
reducing
won't.
your worldview or anybody else's worldview when I say this,
Yeah,
but at what point will something robotic kind of fall into more or less the same category as something just naturally occurring in the world? Like 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 for someone who doesn't believe that an ultimate being created the universe, they still can appreciate the beauty in a sunset, even though it's kind of just something that happened, you know?
yeah.
Um, so like I wonder your thoughts on that.
Okay.
Dang, that is a very, very deep thing you could probably
Do,
go into.
do you,
But
I can get some short thoughts, or we could
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
concluding remarks. No, yeah, I mean, this is very interesting because I guess on my view, it depends on the day. If
Yeah.
on you ask me on Tuesday, I'm gonna say something different than on Wednesday at 3. But I guess in this mood right now, there's a sense in which the sunset is not merely a sunset. it's a beautiful thing with the property of beauty. And what I mean by beauty is something very different than it pleases us. What I mean by the word beauty is presumably what you mean by the word beauty, right? Well, you might mean something divine on your perception of beauty, but it's a similar thing where it's transcendent, and things engage with this transcendent thing, and it's not just a matter of preference. And I think as long as we have aesthetic intuitions that can track this reality, I think, and there is this reality, I think we can have these deeply meaningful experiences. So I'm skeptical there would ever be a collapse of merely material and aesthetic.
Yeah. Okay. I can totally see. See, it's
We're
very
open up a
interesting.
huge
It so is. I'm actually I'm gonna withhold my response. Not that not that I want to debate or anything like that. It's just
we'll leave it
I
like
don't even know. I don't
a
even know that my
cliffhanger.
response. I don't even know if my response is necessarily the correct response, or if my thoughts on this. I mean, obviously they're valid, but I don't even know if my thoughts are as relevant to this conversation as they appear to be right now.
How about this? How
Um,
about you give your response and I will not respond to it. I'll just leave it at that, and then we'll
no,
leave it
okay.
like yeah.
Um, I don't even know. It's like I don't see how that same argument could eventually be made um for something anything that's not man-made. Because I mean, if our aesthetic intuitions over time shift in a way that caters to the current situation with artificial intelligence or anything like that, like there's an idea we talked about in essential science class and at school, like this idea of singularity, where it's like nature and technology, combined in some way. And if and when that happens, what's the true difference? Like what value is there to enjoying a sunset that's any different than enjoying something that technology created? Because um neither of them are really man-made. They're both kind of a product of, I don't want to say chance, but they're both kind of a product of just like circumstance, like whatever, like this
That's
happened
interesting.
and we
Yeah.
can enjoy it. Um,
Maybe a natural unnatural distinction might be made here. That's going to be a little bit hairy. Um,
yeah, absolutely. I'm perfectly content with everything that we talked about. If there ever is
yeah,
an opportunity to do a part two, that's totally fine. But I think that we covered some great ground. I think that
yeah,
hopefully this provides some kind of value and insight to anybody who
yeah.
um, finds
I
finds
was going
this.
to ask,
And
do you have like any concluding remarks or remarks that might tie the whole thing together with a bow or something?
music is uh, very hard to wrap your mind around.
Yeah,
If you're watching this and you know nothing about music, I don't want you to like watch this and think, "Oh, I need to get into music," because you can get into um rock climbing, or you can get into maybe it's like don't get into piano, maybe get into violin, maybe get into guitar, or maybe get into rock climbing or
yeah.
painting or poetry, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I try very hard not to see music as like anything special beyond the fact that
Yeah,
I am composing and I am expanding a world of sound. Um,
yeah,
and if you're expanding a world of language, or if you're expanding a world of something visual or whatever,
yeah,
like it's equally valuable as far as I'm concerned. Um,
yeah.
I'd say that's my final thought on music,
Yeah,
in
and
general.
I guess the final thought I might have is like something so very similar to what you said. I think a good idea for a goal for a human would be to pursue truth, beauty, and goodness to some extent. And there's so many ways to pursue beauty. There's so many ways to do it, right? I mean, rock climbing might fall into that in some way, but it also might fall into just being physically healthy, which is also a different kind of category. But yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many ways to engage with beauty, and I would recommend engaging with beauty. If you're not engaging with beauty, that's okay. You're not a bad person, but I trust me, your life will be fulfilled. And that doesn't mean you have to think that beauty is objective or some people's beauty is better than others or some. No, just engage with something that you find meaningful and like that will absolutely save you. It might crush you sometimes, depending on if you do it in academia. But like,
Yeah,
but yeah, yeah, no,
absolutely. I think that's a great way to kind of tie in like the application of, not that there has to be an application, but like,
it
yeah,
kind of
like
is really.
I mean, hopefully this kind of just whets your appetite, I think, for
Yeah,
like you said, engaging in beauty and engaging in art in general.
yeah,
So I think that's pretty
yeah.
much all I really have to say.
And final thought, you should go check out. I think Ben has an Instagram. Do you have an Instagram that has music stuff
That's a
to
great question.
it? Okay.
Maybe this is where. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
you can check out my Instagram if you want. I think I deleted all my posts out of like self-consciousness, but no, you can still hop on there, and if at any point I decide to post something, then it's all yours.
Well, stay tuned for Ben's work. It'll on Apple Music and Spotify. Like you can go to Apple, type
Yes,
in
it's still
Ben
there.
Beam. Yeah, he has the Lounge. He has a single with Dr. Megan Stapleton, Jazz Christmas
Hmm.
stuff, fantastic.
Yes, listen
Other
to it
stuff.
all. Make me famous, please.
Make me famous by following and liking this podcast and subscribing.
Yes,
So
just
yes,
help out a couple of gingers. That's all I gotta
help
say.
out a couple pianist genders, man. We need it. Like
Yes,
no, yeah,
sir.
Ben, it has been fantastic. Thank you
It
very
has.
much.
It really has.
Have a great and
Absolutely.
thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful day.
All right, see you on this side, bro.
All right.